My mom's new husband takes his kids and are on vacation, leaving me home alone without saying a word. So I go to stay with my dad, and everything spirals out of control. I'm a 16-year-old guy, and I'm in high school right now. My mom married my stepdad Eddie 2 years ago. My mom is 40, and he's 42. My parents never got married. I was actually the result of a really short fling after college that they thought would end in a couple of months, but then my mom got pregnant. She didn't want to terminate the pregnancy, so she had me. My dad also wanted to be a part of my life, so they have shared custody, and I switch homes every month. I spend the year alternating between my mother and my father, splitting my time equally between them. I love my parents, and I know both of them have made a lot of sacrifices for me to be close to them. The first and biggest one is that they've had to live in the same city for years so that the commute between the two houses isn't too difficult. I didn't know about this earlier, but now I know that both of my parents have had to give up on multiple opportunities to advance in their careers just because they needed to remain in the same city for my sake. My mom also apparently had to reject several men who were head over heels for her because she wanted to focus on raising me instead of getting married and dealing with balancing a husband, her work life, and her personal life. I know these things now, thanks to Eddie, indirectly. He's not exactly the best stepfather one could ask for, and my mother had to tell me all of this to make me accept him. She thinks that if she could make so many sacrifices for my sake, I should at least be able to return the favor a little and accept Eddie. I don't know how that works because I didn't ask her to make these sacrifices for me. She could have easily just terminated the pregnancy or let my father take over raising me entirely. But anyway, I never argued with her about any of this because I love her and want her to be happy, so I was ready to accept Eddie even though he's not a very nice guy. By not a nice guy, I don't mean he's mean to me. I just mean he doesn't like me, and he doesn't bother to hide it. I don't know what kind of 42-year-old has issues with a 16-year-old guy, but he definitely does. I don't know why he doesn't like me. I've never done anything to piss him off. In fact, I've always tried to be nice to him because that's how my family raised me, to be nice to everyone, even when they show you that they don't like you. He never speaks to me rudely or makes comments about me because he doesn't speak to me at all. He pretends I don't exist in the family, and this has been going on for the past 3 years. I literally have no idea what I did to piss him off, but one day he just decided he wasn't going to speak to me and would act like I wasn't there. It's the weirdest thing in the world, and I'm not used to this kind of treatment. It's like he's giving me the cold shoulder for something, but I don't know what it is, so I can't even fix my behavior. My mother says that's just how he is. He doesn't have a problem with me, but he doesn't necessarily like me either. However, I feel like if you don't like someone, there should be a reason for it, especially when you're 42 and the other person is just 16. I guess it has something to do with me being my mother's first child, or whatever. I don't even know. The bottom line is that he doesn't like me, and he's made it very obvious. Earlier, we used to get along okay. The first couple of times he came over, he would ask me questions about my life, and I would politely answer. But after one visit, he just decided he wasn't going to speak to me anymore. It was random, and I didn't understand why. I didn't question it at first because I thought maybe he had just forgotten to say hi, but then it happened so many times that it became hard to ignore. I even asked my mother if I had done something to make him angry because he was acting like I wasn't there, turning his face away every time I entered a room. She just said he was trying to wrap his head around having to deal with me being there, as he had only dated women without kids. I found that hard to believe because he has 2 sons, one is 15, and the other is 12. Their mother passed away in an accident after the younger sibling was born. Also, it wasn't true that I'd be there all the time because, as I mentioned, I go to my dad's house every other month. Anyway, a few months passed that way, and eventually, I just accepted that this was how he was, and he wasn't going to speak to me anymore. After a year of being in a relationship, he proposed to my mother, and they got married a few months later. After their marriage, Eddie moved into our house with his kids. Before that, I'd only met his children a couple of times, and they, too, had been taught by their father not to speak to me. It was so crazy, and I don't even know how I dealt with it for so long, for years, in fact. Before getting married, Eddie and my mother lived separately because Eddie's mother was really sick and lived with him. After the marriage, he moved her in with his sister, so he moved in with my mom and brought his children. I don't know if any of you guys have experienced this, but it's really not easy living with people who won't talk to you and pretend you don't exist. I had to put up with it, and it made me feel really bad, like I was some kind of criminal based on how they treated me. And the worst part is I never got to find out what I did wrong in the first place. Years passed, and their behavior didn't change. I was used to Eddie not speaking to me whenever he came to visit my mother, which was quite frequent. After they got married, I got used to him and his kids living with me and not speaking to me. Every time I'd go to my mother's place, I had to mentally prepare to only talk to her for the next couple of weeks. She was the only person who would speak to me in that house, and everyone else acted like I was invisible. It was hurtful, but I did want to spend time with my mother, so I dealt with it because I knew she wasn't going to talk to Eddie about it. I had tried to convince her many times to talk to him and get to the bottom of this, or at least try to solve it. But she told me she'd already spoken to him, and there were personal reasons she couldn't disclose that explained why he refused to acknowledge my presence in the house. She also told me I'd have to suck it up and deal with it. If I tried to argue or stand up for myself, she'd get emotional and tell me I was being ungrateful, overlooking the fact that she had made so many sacrifices for me. She'd say I should give Eddie a pass and deal with his behavior for her sake. I wanted to fight with her but didn't want to hurt her feelings.